All right, welcome to our August 6th Town Board meeting. I hope we keep our electricity because it's been off and on a little bit, but we will. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. Next, our invocation would be given by, welcome back, Pastor Jim Littleton from the Holly Springs United Methodist Church, one of my favorite pastors.
Thank you.
I can't say favorite, you know that. Yes.
I'm very grateful for the invitation to be here, Mayor. Thank you, and thank you for allowing me to be here. Just reflecting for just a few seconds here, there's so much violence in our world, in our country, in our homes, and violence, works to dismember communities and dismembers families and dismember who we are. And we've had so much violence just reported as we've witnessed the last several weeks. And I know how lacks of love and mercy and grace remember families and houses and communities after violence happens. And so I just pray that we can continue to do things in Holly Springs that connect us and not dismember us like violence tends to do.
Great.
Let us pray. Hey, Almighty God, I give thanks for the gift of tonight. I give thanks for the gift of your mercy and your grace. I give thanks for this town of Holly Springs, God. We come tonight for this meeting. We pray for your guidance and wisdom. We give thanks for our elected leaders. We pray that you guide them and give them wisdom as they help make decisions and help us be the community you want us to be. I give thanks for all the staff in Holly Springs, the different staff in different departments that do things like engineering and water and sanitation and things that just help us be a community that prospers. Lord, we give thanks for our first responders. We ask that you continue to keep them safe, help them and keep them out of harm's way as they help others. God, we ask you bless this time tonight. Amen.
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 Thank you, Pastor.
Thanks, Pastor.
Item number 4, adjustment approval, the July 16th, 2019 meeting agenda, Mayor Pro Tem.
Motion to adopt the August 6th meeting agenda with one change, moving consent agenda item 8D to new business.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passed unanimously. Thank you. Item number 5, public comment period will open and close because no one has signed up tonight, so we'll zip right to item 6, recognition, and that would be Farmers Market Week, one of my favorites. Jessica Stiles, Holly Springs Farmer Market, come on down. As she's coming down, August 4th to 10th, 2019 is National Farmers Market Week, and is a great opportunity to show how good we are, and we are. On August 10th, the Holly Springs Farmers Market will be celebrating with customer appreciation and drawings. I hope I'm not taking, well, this will also kick off the campaign to retain our title as #1 most celebrated farmers market in the whole wide world. I mean, well, maybe North Carolina.
Yes.
So Jessica, you're on.
All right. Yes, so this is National Farmers Market Week, which is the best week of the entire year at my job. And as he said, we are having not only customer appreciation giveaways this year, but we have a chance where customers can come and vote for us so we can retain our title as the #1 most celebrated market in North Carolina. So we would appreciate it if you would come do that, support our local farmers and vendors, and just see what a nice little community gathering we have on Saturday mornings.
Thank you for your service there and all the staff that does that every day or every week. I enjoy going. By the way, they have the best peaches in the world. That's a whole other story, right?
Yes.
Thank you, Jessica.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Agenda item 7A, request communication, the I-540 extension update by NC Turnpike Authority. Dennis Jerdingen. Welcome back, Dennis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of the board, and thank you for on behalf of the Turnpike Authority, thank you for your past and your current support. I'm here really for 2 reasons tonight. Number 1, to give you an update on where we are with the 3 projects under construction, and also because of the fact that we are in right-of-way procurement on 2 of those 3 projects, I had been asked to kind of give a sort of an overview of how the right-of-way acquisition process works for DOT and Turnpike.
Yep.
So first of all, just an update on the projects. This is probably something you already know. I assume you can see it there. But the completion of the 540 project extends from NC 55 over to I-87 in really 3 projects. You see here Phase 1 and Phase 2. We're currently in Phase 1, and even though you see 2 project numbers there, R2721 and R2828, the R2721 project has been split into 2 pieces, an A and a B. And the A portion extends from 55 to just east of Pierce Olive, and then from there over to US 401 is where the B piece ends, just east of 401, and then from 401 over to 40 is the R2828. All 3 of these are under contract. One is a traditional design build, which is the R2828, which means we give preliminary plans to a design build team. They complete the design, they get the permit, they acquire right-of-way. On the R2721 A and B, it's really a hybrid design build. It's something that we haven't done before. So what we did was we produced the right-of-way plans, and we started acquiring right-of-way in January of this year. And then we let the remainder of the contract to design build teams, the B piece in February, the A piece in April. And so we basically have for the rest of the year to acquire the right-of-way to turn the project over to the design build team. So what exactly is right-of-way? So right-of-way is the property that's needed to build a road. It includes land and improvements. You may have homes, buildings, industry, businesses, whatever is particularly on that property. And so right-of-way acquisition is the land and the improvements that are on the property. We are guided by laws, policies, and restrictions. The most key there being in that 3rd bullet is the Uniform Act of the Real Property Acquisition Policies Act of 1970. So we have federal guidelines, we have state guidelines, the appraisals that are done, there are guidelines for those that govern those. They have, there's boards that govern the way appraisals are completed and that kind of thing to make sure they're done to a particular standard. And the last bullet there is something I really want to point out. DOT must treat all property owners with impartiality. We must explain all legal rights, pay just compensation in exchange for property rights, and furnish relocation assistance. And that's really a key bullet there, because I know a lot of people in the world have a perception that government can come in and say, we want your house, be out Monday, and we'll worry about settling later and paying you. And it just doesn't work like that. And not only do we have to pay, but we have to pay fair market value for highest and best use, which may or may not be what you're using it for today. If you're using it as residential and the highest and best use is business or industrial, we have to value it that way, and that's the way we have to pay you. So the types of right-of-way acquisition, we have fee simple, where it's basically we pay a certain amount and we retain all rights to the property from there forward. We can use it to build a road on, bridge on. If we don't need it, we can dispose of it later. We have the right to turn around and sell all the right portion of that property. We also at times acquire easements, and the easements can be temporary or permanent, and these are the typical types of easement. Construction or slope easement, which are necessary to build the project. A drainage easement, there may be a pipe, a drainage structure, a ditch, something of that nature. The drainage easement can be permanent or temporary. Construction easement is usually temporary, and a utility easement where you may have a new power pole, new phone lines, cable lines, and those are typically permanent. Now this is an overview, and we'll go into a little detail after this, but really this kind of sums it up all in one slide. And if you start in the top left there, once we know that there's an impact on a parcel, we have an initial contact with the property owner, and then we begin septic and well investigations. And that's important because I'll give you, for instance, we have a property right now on the Complete 540 project. We're not affecting the person's house, we're not affecting the person's well, we're not affecting the person's septic lines. But because Wake County has a policy that the repair area for a septic field has to be unencumbered, the repair area for this particular property is inside the proposed right-of-way. And so we're having to relocate that property owner because there is no repair area for the future in case their septic system were to fail. So it's very important, and that helps us determine early on whether somebody needs to be relocated or not. Second box there, appraisal request. So once we know we're going to affect somebody's property, we have to get an appraisal on it, as I mentioned earlier, depending on the value, and we'll talk about that in a few minutes. A title request to make sure there's clear title. We typically go back about 30 years. A relocation evaluation. Does somebody need to be relocated? That sort of becomes the long pole in the tent. It takes a while to find somebody a new place to live or a business a new place to relocate. Then we make a written offer to the property owner, and if there's a need to relocate, they get a 90-day notice that they'll need to relocate, and then once we close, they get additional 30 days. We have to give them 30 days to relocate. Property owner deliberation or negotiation. We say a minimum of 2 weeks. We really don't go in there and if we're in a hurry on a parcel, we don't walk in and sit down with them one time and say, look, this is the offer, take it or leave it, I need you to move. We give somebody a reasonable amount of time. We're not going to strong arm anybody out. We give them time to think about it, do their homework. Sometimes property owners get an appraisal, whatever they need to do to feel comfortable that what we're offering and what we're asking them to do, they're comfortable with. A settlement or condemnation. So once we settle, it typically takes about 30 days to close. If it's necessary to go to condemnation, that is when we're at an impasse on negotiations. We can't arrive at an amount for which they're comfortable settling. So we will file with the court that by eminent domain, we need access to this property. And if we do file with the court, we also have to make a deposit of the appraised value. So we can't just go and file it, and then when we settle at some point down the road, we sort of leave the property owner out in the cold, so to speak. We put the appraised amount in escrow, and they have access to that at any point in time. They have the right and the access to that money. Again, property owner has a 30-day minimum to vacate, and then once they vacate, it typically takes us about 30 to 60 days to clear the structure. Now, one thing I want to mention too, as far as a parcel can be something that's an impact to a piece of property that's smaller than this room, or it can be acres and acres and acres. So I just want to make sure everybody understands when we say there are a certain number of parcels, that doesn't mean that there are X number of people who have to leave their homes or who are losing the entirety of their property. Literally, some of the impacts to some of the properties that we're working on these projects are in all honesty, they're smaller than this room, but they're necessary. One other thing I'll mention too about the condemnation. If we go to condemnation, that doesn't mean we stop talking. And I'll give you a quick example. We had a business over in Durham. For those of you that know me, I worked in Durham in Division 5 for 10 years. I've been with DOT for 25 on the construction side before going to Turnpike. And we had a property owner that was involved in the East End Connector. It was a business. He was looking at about $4 million to relocate, didn't want to relocate. And we were trying to work out a property swap to help him stay where he was but make him whole. But we got to a point where it became critical we have access to his property. We had been talking for over 2 years. So I went to him and said, I need access to the property. I've got to have legal access. We're going to file condemnation, but we're going to keep having our monthly meetings and try to solve this. And that's exactly what we did. So condemnation it's not a bad word. It doesn't mean that you go to your corner and we go to our corner and we don't talk anymore and we duke it out. It's not that way at all. We can still continue to have conversation, and we typically do. So who is involved in right-of-way? I'm not going to go over these, but the intent of this slide is just to let you know, as far as designing a project, deciding where it goes, how the design gets developed, there are lots and lots of people involved. There's a human environment. We're going to try and avoid neighborhoods. We're going to try and avoid historic properties and park properties and things of that nature. There's a natural environment. We try to avoid wetlands, streams, things of that nature. Our mission is to avoid, minimize, or mitigate. And so we always try now when you look at a map of an area and try and thread the needle, that gets difficult at times, and you can't avoid everything. But there's a lot of people that do a lot of work to try and do exactly that. And even though right now we are working with right-of-way acquisition on the 2 projects, the A and B that I mentioned, we are making plan changes that are to the benefit of property owners because they ask us to change certain things. We still get a good design. Our road is still functional. We don't lose the level of service. And sometimes we can change, sometimes we can't. But We are receptive to every property owner that wants to ask, that wants to have a conversation. We've gone out to multiple HOA meetings. We meet with individual property owners. And so we are receptive to taking a look at every person who has that request if they so choose. Eminent domain, I mentioned earlier. Yes, the government has a right to eminent domain, but property owners, landowners are protected by the U.S. Constitution. So the two things that you see here, the Fifth Amendment, private property shall not be taken without just compensation. And that's what I mentioned earlier, fair market value. If we do an appraisal on somebody's property and there's a $20,000 appraisal, we don't go to that property owner and start at 10 or 15 and try and negotiate to 20. If the appraised value is $20,000, we offer $20,000. That's our starting point, not our high point. We are mandated by law to do that. And the 14th Amendment, we shall not deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. Again, the money's made available. We don't have the right to go in there and kick somebody out of their home overnight. There's a process. We have to find replacement housing or offer replacement housing if we relocate or other relocation benefits. Right-of-way responsibilities. So the process in a nutshell, the agents contact the property owners, they show them copies of the plans, they provide those plans, they explain the impact, answer questions, and explain the right-of-way process. We appraise those impacts and the cost to cure. So if you've got, let's say, a sign, an HOA sign, and it's on a piece, either common property or we've got two now that are on private property, we have to mitigate for that. We have to compensate for that. Settle or condemn proposed property rights to allow DOT access to the property we've talked about. Relocation assistance. Again, there are certain guidelines and certain timeframes that have to be followed. Once that's over, we inspect for asbestos and demo the structures if there's any structures remaining on the property. Some of these really don't apply here, but a couple of them that do. One of the things that right-of-way does is dispose of surplus and residue properties. Once we get through with the project, and we typically don't do it until afterwards, sometimes people elect to sell us remnants. So if there's an uneconomic remnant, let's say you own an acre of property and we're taking 7,500ths of it. If that 2,500ths left, that quarter acre is considered uneconomic, we have to offer to buy it from you. You don't have to sell it, you can retain it, but we have to offer to purchase. A lot of times people offer to sell that property. Once the project's over, if a neighbor or somebody else sees value to that, they can petition the department to dispose of that and sell that property. Manage assets acquired by DOT prior to construction. We had advanced acquisition for quite a few properties out here. And when we do that, sometimes people want to stay in the properties and basically they'll rent back what they sold. And so we actually have a section within DOT that manages that. It's a property management section. And the rest of those really don't apply to what we've got out here. Basic acquisition process, again, we have to give written notice of the offer to purchase. You have the right as an owner to get your own appraisal if you so choose, or we'll show you our appraisal. We'll happily share that with you. The just compensation and fair market value I mentioned earlier, payment rendered before surrender, and the condemnation I mentioned earlier as well. If we do go to condemnation, one of the things that we typically do prior to a court case is a mediation. And if in cases that are litigated where there is condemnation, we settle a good portion of our cases at mediation, which is where I spent most of my day today. Basic appraisal, again, there are guidelines. People have to be certified, and there's what's called USPAP that we have to go by, and that's an appraisal standard that everybody has to abide by. Once an appraisal is done, there's an appraisal review section within DOT. So it's not that one person goes out and designates a value for a property and nobody checks behind them. There is a review process and a sign-off process. And you'll see by the fifth bullet there, I believe it is, if a property is valued over $1 million or there's more than $250,000 in what we call damages to the remainder, then we have to get a second appraisal. There's a couple of different ways the appraisals are done. Typically, if it's a small value, which is under $25,000, we can, and there are no damages, we can do a claim report. It eliminates having to do the full-blown appraisal for just a couple $1,000s. And then there's a cost approach, sales comparison approach, and income approach. Sales comparison and income approach are the two that you typically see. Income approach is typically if you've got a business or some type of entity that generates income, is typically looked at there. Sales comparison is pretty much where you look at comps, look at other properties that are very similar, and they're determined that way. And the claim report in the bottom, I mentioned that already. Basic relocation, again, we have to provide relocation assistance. And so we have to provide moving payments, replacement housing payments. If you want us to find your replacement house, it has to be on the market. In other words, we can't go and say, well, John Doe's going to sell his house in 3 months. I'd like to move into that one when he gets ready to move out. If it's not available, we can't consider that as replacement housing, so it has to be on the market. But we basically pay all the expenses to set people back up. Same thing for businesses. The house has to be decent, safe, and sanitary. We have to put you in one that's livable and as comparable as we can get it to what you had before. As far as businesses, if we relocate businesses, we have to make sure they are set up before they move out of the other property to make sure that they can continue to operate. And the 90 days there, I know you've seen that before, heard me say that before, but again, if it's important, you say it multiple times. Now, these are a couple of the things that then typically can slow things down. If you've got a property in bankruptcy, if there's soil contamination, if you've got a spot that was a gas station, you've got an underground storage tank, and there's been some leakage there, we are restricted by law as to what we can do with that property. Unless the contamination is below a certain level, we can't acquire in fee simple. And so then we give the property owner, if they want to sell it, then they have to clean it up before we can buy it. So things get kind of complicated there, and I won't read those to you. You can read, but those kinds of things that are on that list typically slow the process down and take some extra steps to get resolved before we can purchase. If you want to see some information, this is available on our website. Anybody and everybody can pull this up. This is on DOT's website, and it talks all about the appraisal process, the negotiation process, pretty much the things that I've told you here tonight. You'll find information such as this, where we have appraisal standards and acquisition standards, and the information that's on this website is available in English and Spanish for anybody who wants to go and look at that. I mentioned a couple of the different things that are involved in the right-of-way process, and I mentioned relocation. You see the second person there, Robert's our state relocation director. Appraisal reviews, Jim McGowan there, and the third person, he's our state appraiser, so his staff are the ones that review appraisals and make sure that they're good before offers are made. And Heather Fulgham is the state negotiator, so she's oversees the people who do the negotiations. At this point in time, I will entertain any questions you may have.
Questions of the board or comments?
Real quick, can you define fair market value?
It depends. It depends on whether it's easement, whether it's temporary or permanent. It depends on the area. And I'll give you for an example. So there's a subdivision on one of the projects where there were two properties in the same subdivision, and where recently we had offers that went out to two owners, and they were literally 100 yards apart. But the offer on one of the homes or one of the properties was $60,000. The other side of the street, 4 houses over, was $30,000. And so one of was an easement, one was right of way and easement, and so it depends. Now, a permanent easement, like a permanent utility easement, or typically, especially permanent utility, is considered really a permanent impact. It's almost the value of right of way, because you do have some preclusions as far as what you can do with your property, even though you retain it. And one of the points I did fail to make earlier, and I just wanted to kind of give you an update, on the A project, which is the one closest to Holly Springs, currently there are 174 affected parcels, and 47 have been settled. So that kind of gives you an idea of where we are in the process. And Ms. Lee, again, it goes back to the use of the property and what it's deemed, as far as some properties are in industrial sections, some are residential. It just really depends.
So I think the questions I'm hearing or that people ask is, say somebody's property, their home, is, the home is 50, 60, 70 years old, valued at maybe $80,000. what is going to be offered to them? Where are they going to find another home for $80,000? So I noticed in your relocation slide, it talked about finding. Does the DOT help them actually find a home? Do they help them acquire a home? You know, in a perfect world, everybody, you know, has great jobs, great credit, no problem buying a home. But in our world, that's not always how it is. So how does that happen? How do these people find a home once their home that they've been in forever is taken away?
Okay. Some really people do it in typically two different ways. If you want us to help you find a home, a replacement home, we will do that. Some people elect to go find their own. They take the offer or whatever the negotiated settlement is, and they take the relocation benefits and they go find their own. And that's fine. If they don't, if they want us to help them, what we try to do is we try to find 3 comparable properties and then let them select. Now, I'm not going to say that's always easy to do. For the example you just mentioned, there was a gentleman in this community whose home was less than 1,000 square feet, and it was paid for. He'd lived there for a long time. It's difficult to find a 3-bedroom home under 1,000 square feet. But if he wants us to help him find that, we will do so. We offer differential mortgage payments to help, if that's what it takes, to get them in something that is closely comparable. But the one thing that we do try to do is not to put somebody in a situation where they're going to be harmed, where now their taxes are higher, or their utilities are higher, their insurance is higher, and things like that. So you don't have to accept the comparable housing. If you ask us to go find it, and we try and find it for you, and you reject it, you have that right as well. You don't have to move where we propose. But if we do find those comparables and you elect not to, then it becomes your responsibility to find the replacement property.
And those comparables can be in another county and anywhere in the state, or are you still trying to keep?
We try to keep people in the same vicinity of where they were to begin with.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Other questions or comments?
I have some. Thank you for coming out. I know that there's a group of people that think that 540 can't come fast enough, and I understand that. What I'd like to do is speak about the folks who are actually being impacted, because we have a huge community here, as you said. There's still about 130 properties left. Just some feedback I've heard and questions I have. You didn't, like time frame wise, so we actually had a town council meeting where a bunch of folks came to us and said, we just got letters, how can you help us? So we were kind of taken aback and not aware of what was happening in our own community. So I think that's one of the things that I think Randy's working with you now to have a better communication, because we want to advocate for them as well, because they're our residents. So one of the things that I heard, but I want you to confirm, are you using third-party folks to come in and do some of that work to acquire land or do some of the negotiations?
Okay. You mentioned a couple of things in there, and I'm going to try and catch them all. And before I do, I want to mention one thing. And Randy and I have met. We've spoken about right-of-way. And even though I put some the right-of-way unit people on the slide,
Right.
I am managing the right-of-way acquisition for Complete 540. So
Okay.
Randy has my contact. I have business cards. I will meet with any property owner that has questions. I've gone and had HOA meetings.
Okay.
We want people to be informed. We're going to be a neighbor. We're a neighbor to Holly Springs and other municipalities. We're a neighbor to the people that are going to be left, and we want to be a good neighbor.
Okay.
And we can hopefully do that by sharing the information. Now, going back to the question about the consultants, yes, we have a different consultant for the A project and a different consultant for the B project. And our goal is to have access to all of the properties by the end of this year. We're probably not going to quite make that, but because of the fact that we are doing this differently and we're supposed to turn over the access to this project to the design build team by later this year, we set up our right-of-way acquisition contracts with stages where we had certain numbers of parcels by certain dates,
Okay.
and we're supposed to have access to all by the end of the year.
Okay. So here's one perception, is that the third party that you're using, they're making money on getting the least amount of price. Like, there are some perceptions that they're in to get a cheap price and then they'll make a profit. Is that correct?
The right-of-way consultants get paid the same amount of money regardless of what the property settles for. They
Okay.
get paid a certain amount once the appraisal's done, once the offer is made, once the property settles.
Okay.
So if that property settles in 1 day or 100 days, and regardless of whether it settles for $10 or $10,000, does not affect how they get paid.
Okay, so they're not getting a percentage or something?
They are not.
Okay, because that was one of the
It is
perceptions.
a per
we-
each price per parcel.
Okay, that's great to hear. Because there is fear in the community, because these are folks that have lived there for a long time. And I think the other part is that some of us are online and have a lot of connectivity, some other folks don't. So I think I'm asking you, thank you for coming here. If we can spend some time and help this community learn what their rights are, make sure that they feel they're not taken advantage of. I'm not saying you are.
Sure.
It's just fear. There's fear, and we need to, especially if we're on a time frame to finish this by 2019, we could use some help.
I completely understand that, and that is, they should be concerned. I mean, that is their property, that is where they have lived or where they have worked, and that is why we answer every call, every request to meet. One of the things we also did was when Division 5 recently had their project fair out of the McKimmon Center, I had the right-of-way consultant for these two projects and the right-of-way consultant who's going to be purchasing property on the True Design Build piece. And we set it up. We set up out there. We sent postcards to every property owner affected by every one of these projects and invited them to come ask questions. And I will say, not taking anything away from Joey and his staff over there, but we were probably the busiest of just about any project that was out there all night. But honestly, it made me feel good because we were getting the word out, and they were getting that word firsthand. And that's why we are answering calls and visiting people's houses and sitting in the kitchen with them. We want them to get it firsthand. You know what happens when information gets passed second and third
Right.
hand. So again, I've got cards I'll be glad to share with all of
Right.
you. Randy knows how to get in touch with me. If you hear from anybody that wants information, please send them my way.
There are some names that Randy can share with you that are taking kind of a leadership role or spearheading role that I'm sure would love for you to do that in our community at their local church or in some of those groups. That'd be great. 'Cause,
Happy to.
would love to make sure that folks understand they have a legal right to get fair compensation for what's going on. Okay.
And we would love to do that. I had a lady call me and ask questions, and we weren't taking all of the property, just a piece of the property. And so I talked to her for about 15 to 20 minutes and answered all her questions. And when she started to get off the phone, she said, I've got one more question. Do you think I can get paid for this property? I said, well, let's reopen this conversation and talk a little while longer. And so I shared with her the things I was sharing with you. And so, yes, we want people to be informed.
It's a lot of information, so it's you know, it might be needed to be said more than once. So that,
Okay.
thank you again for coming out, and
very
I
welcome.
think that there's some great opportunity for more dialogue here.
Okay?
Any other comments or questions for Dennis?
Can I just clarify your timeline again? So the offer negotiation process is underway now. You have 47 homes that have settled, another 130 to go that you're looking to wrap up by the end of the calendar year. Is that right?
So that's our goal. And let me clarify one thing when I said parcels. If an owner has multiple tracts of property, we treat that as one parcel. So I will tell you, there are owners who own 2, 3, 4, 5 pieces of property, but we call that one parcel. So just semantics. But that, again, that is our goal. And what we did when we started the acquisition, as opposed to just handing one consultant 150 parcels and another 150 parcels and said, go forth and purchase, we prioritized. I actually prioritized. And so I told them to go get the properties in this particular order. So even though some of those properties, in all likelihood, probably won't be completed by the end of the year, by pursuing it in that order, it gives the contractor the places where he wants to work and he needs to work, so we can go ahead and start the project.
Okay.
Okay. Good. Thank you,
Gladly
Dennis.
take your card, that'd be great.
Okay?
Yes.
Appreciate you coming.
And real quick, is the website, the information that's on the website, is it broken down and simple to understand as your presentation, or is it in more DOT jargon? I'm just wondering if we're going to direct people there, I want to make sure they're going to be able to break it down.
It's going to be more detailed and technical than what you heard tonight. But if anybody's got any questions, I'm going to give you this, and more than welcome to take all the calls.
We get a digital copy of your presentation?
Actually, you guys already have it.
Can you share it with us?
Yes, I sent that this morning.
Thank you.
Sure.
Okay. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Love your card.
Thank you.
Thanks, Des.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Agenda 8A, consent agenda, Mayor Pro Tem.
Motion to approve the consent agenda with the exception of 8D.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passed unanimously, thank you. Agenda item 9A, new business, Rex Hospital Infrastructure Reimbursement Agreement, Kendra Parrish. Engineering,
you.
I think.
Did you pull 8B or 8D?
8D.
Thank you. That was hard to hear.
Right? Or 8C?
Okay.
Okay.
So before you tonight, this is the Rex, UNC Rex Hospital Infrastructure Reimbursement Agreement. And just a little bit of history. We had, back in September of 18 is when Town Council approved the plan for Rex Hospital. And during that time, we had been in conversation with a few different terms of a potential agreement. And so we've continued working in that direction. And tonight, what's before you is the Infrastructure Reimbursement Agreement, and I wanted to just hit on a few of those highlights. The first highlight is the developer is agreeing to dedicate by plat the right-of-way for the new grade-separated interchange that's on our comprehensive transportation plan. This exhibit here shows the functional alignment. So this is the parcel here that the current Rex facility is here, and this is where the new campus is going. And what this shows is the grade-separated interchange. And so what we've had them dedicate with this agreement is this area in here to preserve that for the future ramp. The second term of the agreement is while the Rex development was under design, they did their sewer study, and it showed they go into a gravity sewer line that comes down Avent Ferry Road. And about that time is when the plans were coming together for Town Hall Commons. And that sewer line needed to be relocated. And so while we were relocating it, and we knew it needed to be a little bit bigger in order to handle the flow from the hospital, we went ahead and upsized that while we had the road open, so that our taxpayers only had to be impacted one time. And so the cost for us to do that was the $142,196, because that's important. That's going to be paid by the Rex developer to go towards the town for that upgrade that we did. The third term of the agreement, as you know, with our bond initiative, one of the green bond projects for transportation was the realignment of Avent Ferry Road over to Stinson, the screen here. And if you want to find out more about that project and where it's at, always visit www.hsbonds.com. There's updates frequently on all the projects. For the infrastructure reimbursement agreement, because this area is across the frontage of the Rex parcel, their fee in lieu was $113,000. So with this agreement, they would pay $113,000 towards that bond project. The last two highlights for the agreement is there are currently overhead Duke utility lines that are on Main Street and Avent Ferry Road. And in our ordinance, we state that overhead utility lines must be placed underground. And right now, we're saying that, with this agreement, the developer is engaging in a feasibility analysis. That's where they pay a deposit to Duke. Duke actually does the design and feasibility. There's a lot that goes into that. And they come up with an estimate and plan, or they may find that they just can't allow that section to go underground. But they can't give us that answer until they do the feasibility analysis. So what this agreement is saying is that the parties agree that if after such analysis, if they can bury it, and Duke says that it's something that can be buried, it's just not a long enough stretch, then they would pay a fee in lieu of the $196,999.25. And then obviously if Duke comes back and says this line absolutely cannot be put underground and we're putting that in writing, then they would not pay that fee to us. So that's the term there. And then as a result of the plan going before town council back in, I guess it was September of last year, it was asked or required as a condition of plan approval that along Main Street, there, if you look on Main Street here, their sidewalk went across their frontage along Main Street and then stopped at the driveway in to the facility. And it was a condition of approval that the sidewalk be extended up to Maple, because once you get just that one lot over to Maple, there's a crossing here and then there's sidewalk all the way up Main Street. And so there was just that one segment that could connect the downtown area with the hospital. So that is required, and so there's a statement here that says that the developer shall design, acquire easements, and construct the additional public sidewalk along Main Street to Maple Avenue. I just do want to point out, if easements cannot be acquired by the developer through commercially reasonable efforts, the acquisition shall be completed in accordance within the agreement, which is what we do for normal public infrastructure. I can answer any questions. The motion is to approve the UNC Rex Hospital Infrastructure Reimbursement Agreement.
Quick question. In our book, it says developer may proceed with work up to electrical rough-in. Is that still correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, that was a point that was made some time back. Okay. Other questions or comments? Good. I think we're good. By motion, please.
Motion to approve the UNC Rex Hospital Infrastructure Reimbursement Agreement.
Second?
Motion been made and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passed unanimously. I'm ready for it to open tomorrow. Are you? Okay. Thanks, Tom. Item 9B, new business, Lowe's, Wegmans, reimbursement agreement, and NCDOT municipal agreement. Again, Kendra Parrish, Engineering. Thank you.
Okay. So again, this is an infrastructure reimbursement agreement that has been in the works since the plan was going through the review process with town council and subsequently approved. I wanted to take a second, the terms of this agreement, I want to give a little background history of how they came to be. What you're looking at here is, this is the Wildwood subdivision. Ralph Stevens is up here, Piney Grove, this is Garrison subdivision. The Wildwood, or we call it Basil Creek pump station, is right here. The Lowe's Wegmans site will drain to this pump station, as well as everything upstream of this area. All this developable area is what's draining to this pump station. When you design pump stations, you design certain components for the ultimate build out, but there are other components that you cannot oversize within the electronics, the force main. There's different areas that you have to maintain certain velocities. So in every pump station that's built, there's usually a phase one, which goes in, and then there's planned upgrades as more flow comes to the station. So in 2014, the developer built this pump station. The force main, so everything gravity flows to the pump station, and then it pumps the flow over to Garrison Pump Station, which also collects the Garrison subdivision. And then the Garrison pumps up to Avett Ferry and over to the wastewater plant. When this was put in place, we obviously knew with that long-range planning when phase 2 would be triggered. And so as development came in afterwards, we were collecting money at a proportionate share to go towards that next upgrade. The next upgrade, which is the one that the Lowe's Wegmans development will be constructing, is increasing the size of the pumps in the pump station itself, extending a new force main and gravity line to Garrison. They will be abandoning the Garrison pump station. So the pump station that's right there outside of Garrison will be abandoned. It will be planted grass. That will no longer be part of that subdivision right there. And then there's a little bit, small section of force main up by Avent Ferry Road. So that's the scope of what the Lowe's Wegmans development will be doing. There is a phase 3. There's over a mile of force main on Piney Grove that we would need, much later. So anticipation for phase 2, to date, we have collected $744,885. It's been on our list, our capital improvement project list, that we were going to be having to do this within the next couple of years. So when Lowe's came in and Wegmans, and we were looking at their sewer report, we talked to them, and it was a great opportunity since they were coming in, if they could take our funds that we collected and then they administer and build the project with their development. If they did not do that, the town would have to initiate a project to be built within a short time frame, and usually it costs more and would take longer. So we spoke with them. They were open to do that. We felt like they should have a hand in it because they tipped the flow just enough to have that phase 2. And so the breakdown of the funds, so the total estimated cost that's attached in this our infrastructure reimbursement agreement is the $1,261,500. So if you take our previously collected funds plus some additional funds, the $182,445 that we've yet to collect, and then Stevens Track, which has been to council, you're familiar with that, the Mungo Homes development. We're working on trying to get them to pay towards this project as well. That would be a separate agreement. And that's how we fund, this is the funding plan for the 1.2. So just in other words, it's a total, if you're looking at it and you're saying, well, how much is the town coming out of pocket? The total is $927,330. That is the addition of our previously collected and the additional wastewater funds. And there's 2 motions to this developer agreement. I'm sorry, infrastructure reimbursement agreement. The first one is the Lowe's Wegmans agreement. The second motion is there is a DOT/town municipal agreement. And back when they were going through plan review, DOT required them to build the synchronized street that's out on 55. DOT, thank you. DOT was contributing $350,000 towards that improvement. DOT did not want to give that directly to the Lowe's development. There was something in with the timing of the approvals and whatnot, so they wanted to do that via a municipal agreement, which is also, that's the motion 2. This municipal agreement says that when DOT inspects, approves the infrastructure, the town pays the Lowe's developer $350,000, and then we ask for reimbursement back from DOT, so it's a pass-through cost. DOT is using us as a pass-through to the development. So those are the 2 motions before you, and I can back up and answer any questions that you may have.
Tell me more about the DOT part. Are they reluctant to work with us on this, or do they want to work with us on this? Just kind of clear that up in my mind.
Is who reluctant?
Sorry?
Are you asking who is reluctant?
Working with DOT for the bottom line here, it says, in other words, a pass-through of funds in the amount of $350,000. Is that something that we're working on with DOT, or?
No. DOT, what's attached in the packet is a municipal agreement.
Okay.
That DOT is saying, town, once Lowe's Wegmans does the work that they're required to do
Right.
out on 55, You pay them $350,000, and then we will reimburse you town
Got it.
for $350,000.
Okay.
So everyone is happy about it. There's no one that's reluctant.
That's why I asked the question.
Okay.
Kendra,
Questions or comments?
if we can go back to the numbers that you had, the 700 in here. So what is the timing for the Stevens track? And the question I'm asking is that the 744 is solid, we already know that, and I'm expecting this work is starting soon, so we know about the 182. But we're anticipating money from something that has not been finalized yet.
Correct.
So, we have dollars here, but, what if this costs more, or what if it takes longer? What happens to the Stevens track? Is this the amount they're going to pay, and then the town has to carry extra costs, or how does that work?
Right. So you've asked a few questions. I'm going to try to back up and answer
Sure.
each one of them, and if I leave one
Sorry.
out, you ask me again. Okay, so we are pursuing a contract with the Stevens track for the 334. If that comes before you, they write that check, we drop it in, that's best case scenario.
Okay.
Worst case or conservative is that 334,170, we do not gain that from the Stevens track, and then the town would have to make up that money.
Okay.
So we've talked about, worst case, we're 1.261,500. Best case, we're 927,330,000. That is something that their attorney, the attorneys are working on that agreement, and so we don't have it yet. So it is a forthcoming or anticipated, but is not firm, and so knowing the best and worst case is helpful in making that decision. If the pump station cost more, we've had this happen before, we've been doing this, with different developers for years. This infrastructure reimbursement agreement has an engineer's opinion of cost that's signed and sealed and attached to it, and they have, they've come up with $1.2 million. If it comes in over this agreement, the way it reads and the way we've typically had them read in the past is that it's this amount or actual, whichever's less. So we're capped out, no matter if this pump station costs $2 million, we're capped out at our contribution to the Lowe's Wegmans developer. And that's my understanding of the way our agreements read, and if you want, our town attorney can also make sure that I'm stating that correctly. If there's further questions. So that was two of them. Was there a third one?
Well, I just didn't know timing-wise, because we're going to this agreement now, so two of those numbers we know are pretty solid as of today, but
Right.
we don't know the Stevenson number or the timing.
Correct.
So say that again about capped out. So if there are additional costs, the town will be picking up the difference.
If it comes in and it's a $2 million pump station, per this agreement, our risk or our payment to them is $1,261,500.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's actually $1,178,241.
Okay.
So,
Okay,
yeah, our cap is that contribution. But it's true that the risk of the Stevens tract developing it is a
Right.
risk. We don't know
Okay.
if they're going to develop. We assume that they are. They're in construction, drawing approval, but,
Right.
anything can happen. That's-
right.
Just a comment, Counselor, thank you for your hard work on this agreement. I know it's been many phone calls and many meetings, and I appreciate your help. The other thing that I want to say is I've never seen and heard so many people saying, I'm so happy that Wegmans is coming. I've been driving 2 hours to go to the Wegmans where I live and wherever that is. So, again, thanks everyone for making this happen. Again, John, thank you. Other comments or questions? Seeing none, we have two motions, please.
Motion to approve the Lowe's Wegmans Infrastructure Reimbursement Agreement.
Second.
Motion made, second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passed unanimously. Number two.
Motion to approve the NCDOT Town Municipal Agreement.
Second.
Motion made, second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passed unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kendra. Agenda item 10A, Norris Holland Hair House Sales Update.
Mr. Mayor.
We're going to do 8D.
I'm sorry?
We gotta go back to 8D
got
before that one.
8D that we pulled out of the consent.
Oh, that's right. Okay, I'm sorry. Let's go back to that. Somebody's got that. I didn't have it in my pad. You want to do it?
Yeah. So you want to hit 8D first?
I guess we could.
Yeah, we need to go to business, so
It's part of, yeah, new business.
just move to the
Alright.
bottom of the list before the.
I see it. Okay, you're right.
So we'll go to 10A then first. Unfinished business.
No,
No, it's going to be under,
9.
Oh, I'm sorry, you are correct.
We're doing 8D now.
So we're going to do 8D,
8D under 9, yeah.
Okay,
under new business.
under new business. Right.
Councilman Barry, you had some...
Yeah, I know. I
Back on
request.
that?
Sure, yeah, I requested to pull this off of the consent agenda, and I know we've had a lot of discussion on this topic amongst some others through email this week, and some of the answers that have been coming back are a little bit concerning. I know, I've been talking to the manager about, some of our capital reserve fund accounting and just getting some better controls. I think when we approved the inter-fund loan agreement for our transportation bond, I made some similar comments about how expensive that was and tying up some of those funds. And I'm growing some concern on a number of these projects we have, transportation-based, where we either lack an approved project budget and we're approving some of these expenses. And, we're seeing estimates come back a lot higher. It happened with Town Hall Commons. We're seeing the right-of-way estimate on this project significantly higher than at one point when we thought it was going to be. We don't have a budget on that. I'm just a little concerned about approving more funding until we get some of these things in order and get some get-well plans on, prioritizing these projects, what's going to be funded when, and if these costs are going to overrun by significant amounts, what's going to be cut back in order to manage that. And speaking for myself, I don't have a really good picture of all of our moving projects right now. Sportsmanship Way, some of this stuff still on Avent Ferry that's coming up with phase 1 and 2. We've got this project on Holly Springs Road, some other ones we're looking at there, plus all of our transportation bond projects on top of that. So I just don't feel comfortable approving funding, and I'm happy to hear anyone else on this, but I just don't feel comfortable moving forward with funding until we get some of this stuff in order.
Comments?
No, I agree. I think we need to have an update on all that's going on and make sure, I know everything's a priority, but I agree that we need to have an update on the funding, where we are, how things are looking as we go ahead.
Given the number of emails going back and forth, I think we're learning things almost real time. I agree. I think this would be, and
That's 3.
Randy, you've talked to a few of us about this week.
Shall we table this?
You can, let me just double check on if there's any timing issues associated with it, but looking at Kendra and Christina.
There are some timing issues. We were supposed to initially have this project funded for construction funding authorization by September 30th, which we're not going to make, and Campo's agreed to, extend that time somewhat, but they'll only extend so much, and right now we don't know what that time frame is, but they have extended at least till the end of the year.
Yeah, so right now what they're looking at, the federal government, if you don't pull down funds by a certain time, there's what's called the rescission, and that's where the federal government can pull the grant funds back from you. What's going before the executive board, Campo, will be a recommendation to grant some extensions. This is one of the projects that we're hoping to get that extension granted. But every time we delay, that's making that project, that money look, the federal government might pull that money back from us. So this one, our intention here was to get the appraisals, and we've talked to DOT about the escalating construction cost. And they said, until you have something substantial like your appraisals, come to us once you have the appraisals, and then we'll see about additional funding. So that was the next step. But for both right-of-way and construction, we'd be looking at DOT to get additional funding for this project with the escalations that we've seen. But that is one risk in continuing to delay the project. We might lose the money altogether.
So having this, given the situation as a consent agenda item, I think is challenging. And this is now another example where this deserves more discussion, and I think we all want, or I want that. I'm in agreement with Dan and Sherry. Just so we can, because it's impacting, you know, a lot of folks downtown who have been here for a long time. We need to make sure we have all our ducks in a row, and I think we do need the time to get a better picture.
I think, you know, if it's the will of the council, we can certainly reach back out to Campo and see if we can get, I don't know if we can get another month extension or whatnot, in terms of an indication back from the council. And then we could tee this up for a conversation, maybe at the latest at your September workshop. There may be an opportunity before then, but that would be one potential opportunity here in about a month from now.
I mean, if this is something where we have to have a special workshop, I'm okay
Yeah,
with that. It doesn't have to be on a
absolutely.
Tuesday. You know, just give us a few days' notice, but I think this is important enough in all these projects, getting an update.
Yeah.
That we need to, may need to do that.
What we could do, we could reach out tomorrow and try to get a sense for
Yeah.
how quickly they need a
Urgency.
response, and if we can get some extension. If it feels like it's a little bit tighter, I can reach back out to you and see if not having a late August workshop, maybe
Yeah.
dedicated just to this topic, and we can delve a little bit more deeply into
Yeah, we don't want to jeopardize it by any means. So whatever we need to do.
Kendra, has this come before the TCC yet?
Yes, last
thought it had.
Thursday, it was before the TCC.
So you and I have been talking about this, right?
And then, when is your meeting?
Wednesday, next
The-
Wednesday,
Next Wednesday.
I believe.
So the TCC has voted to give this project as well as others extensions.
Right,
That goes before the mayor's group next Wednesday.
correct,
If they support those extensions,
correct.
then we're good. But if they didn't, if they said, you know, enough's enough, pull money, then that's when I think Campo will have that for sure answer, is
Right.
next Wednesday after the mayor's vote. But we could talk to the executive director and see kind of what he's hearing and what he thinks may be the outcome.
I can't guarantee it, but I have talked to a few of the mayors, and I think they understand our position, so keep your fingers crossed for that meeting. It will come up, and I know somebody's going to make the motion, so.
So next week would be the drop
Yeah.
date, is what you're saying?
Wednesday.
Next Wednesday?
That's when we would know for sure if there were extensions granted.
And if not,
If extensions were not granted,
right,
then
you would know at that time, or would they,
we would probably know at that time.
that day?
When the actual rescission occurs, I think the federal government does that sometime after September. I've never
So if they don't grant the extension, I mean, we still have the opportunity to go ahead and keep moving along, right? It's not all of a sudden, you know, the extension.
So if they do
Maybe.
not grant the extension, we lose the 80% funds that were coming from DOT.
My point is, I hope they grant the extension, because if not, it is possible we lose the funds. Correct?
I didn't hear the last part of what you just said.
Yeah.
Sorry.
If they don't grant the extension, there, it's possible we lose the funds.
Yeah,
But we were asking for an extension, not just for what we talked about tonight, but,
the whole
yeah,
project, yeah.
okay.
Right.
Is it a fair statement to say that if we do not agree to this 80,000 transfer, that the project is dead?
I do not. think
Yes, so
Oh.
this $80,000 does the appraisals, and, you know, you've learned DOT's process, our process is exactly the same. You know, step one, identify the property, step two, get appraisals to find out what people's values are worth. Unfortunately, we don't have the pull that DOT has, so we're the Turnpike Authority, so appraisers take a long time to do their work for the town, sometimes 8 weeks. So the sooner we can get this done, the better. So that's why we brought this before to you relatively early in the process, independent of the extension argument. And we had the manager and I had a lot of discussions about the wisdom of going forward with these appraisals. We're still going to be able to use them if we don't get the extension and have to make subsequent applications for different pots of money, you know, so this isn't money that's not well spent, because we'll just have to bear a little bit of cost if there's a major delay in updating these appraisals. We'll have to if we were to do this project in 2 years instead of on the track that it is now, or 3 years or 4 years, you know, we could take these appraisals that we get and ask the appraiser, assuming they're still in business, in the appraisal business, to just give us an update, and that's a low price. What we were going to do with this is, just like Mr. Jernigan said, is prioritize the list of appraisals, and there are 5 that are very much impacted, have a large impact, 5 properties that we've identified. And we'd start with those 5 and take some of those values and extrapolate them out to others, the comp values that we get from those appraisers, extrapolate those out to some of the smaller ones. So we're certainly not going to spend the full $80,000, write a check for $80,000 to Jane or Joe appraiser and say, here you go. But we need this, we need the money to be able to let the contracts for the appraisals for these. So that was sort of our game plan, and understanding that there's a long lag with appraiser work. It's a good business to be in if anybody's in the audience listening for work. Being an appraiser in Holly Springs is a good business.
How much does it pay?
That's about $80,000. But but we do. That's going to be the long black box, long period of time black box for this right-of-way acquisition, is determining what the fair market value is for these properties.
If I could add to what the town attorney mentioned, one of the other important pieces of doing the assessments is so that we can better learn what the actual values are going to be, because based off the original estimates, we think those original estimates are low. And so when we get the updated appraisals back, then we can go back to DOT, NCDOT, to negotiate perhaps some different parameters in the funding partnership. And we need those appraisals to be able to go back to them to be able to do that. But certainly understand your questions and your interest around a little bit more information and the concerns that you all have raised. It sounds like maybe there's an opportunity for us to see what the vote is like on
I believe it's next Wednesday.
week. And then in the event that we did need to move quickly, we could put this agenda item back on for your August 20th meeting. And if there's not a time sensitivity, we can tee it up, either a special workshop at the end of August or plug it into your September workshop.
Well, just for the record, in case anybody is saying, does this happen all the time? The answer is yes. Every year for 17 years, we go through this process, not only for just us, but for every other municipality in Wake County. There's always a group of projects that hit that wall, and we just happen to hit the wall. But I personally hope that this will all turn out fine on Wednesday, with Kendra's help.
We're at risk of delay even without the appraisals. I understand the need to get the appraisals going, but even with that aside and the funding request for that, we're at risk of
Some larger issues.
for delay for just broader reasons beside that. Am I correct?
Mr. Berry, if you could you state that one more time, please?
So the money that's being asked for the appraisals, I guess I'm just not clear on, is that what is going to put us at risk for losing the money?
or does it add
are we
to it?
already delayed regardless of this funding for appraisals?
No, there are other pieces that are in play that I think that are more time sensitive and critical, not so much the actual appraisal.
This isn't going to tilt the scale for them to
There's already a little bit of delay and a risk of the funding. But with the TCC's recommendation, it was to extend this one, because this one is a 2019 project. They're more worried about the 2016, 2017 projects. But there already was a risk. This is time sensitive because we want to see these numbers so that we can decide what's the next steps for this project. And this is where, until we have the appraisals, we don't really know those costs.
and how much more money to ask for.
Right. And so that's why I think it's important at some, time sensitive for their appraisals, is because until we know those, we just don't know.
So to clarify, if we don't decide tonight, we hear next week, and if they decide not to extend, we still have time to rally and do something to mitigate the risk of losing this money? Or is this like tonight's the night?
Tonight's not the night.
Tonight's not the night,
If you
okay.
don't vote on it tonight and you vote on it in 2 weeks, we've just lost 2 weeks of time
Yeah.
that we need to appraise properties, and that's fine,
Okay.
It's not.
We just don't want the decision is it going to make things worse? Is it really going to have that extreme of effect? I hope you guys, if you really feel that this has to be done tonight, we need to know that. But if you understand, just to understand where we're coming from also.
I think it's appropriate, based off your sentiment, to go ahead and delay it.
And if you hear anything between now and next Wednesday that changes your mind on that, let us know. We can come together, and figure something out.
Well, we've already talked, as I say, Chris Lucasina, who's the director, and I had a nice long chat, and I think he's flexible. I'm pretty sure that the mayors are flexible, because again, we go through this every year, and whatever good projects come to pass that is in that bucket, I think the mayors like to say, let's not lose that project. So, like I say, I can't, when next Wednesday will be the time. It'll be a factor anyway, yes or no, for the time being. Okay?
So do we need a motion to table this?
Just take no action,
Okay.
we'll bring it back.
Okay.
Done? Good?
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
Thank you, John. All right, back to agenda item 10A, Norris Holland Hair House sales update, minimum bid modification. The patient, Gina Clapp.
Good evening. Gina Clapp with the Department of Planning and Zoning.
Good evening.
And this evening, what we're going to do is give you a quick update on the sales and marketing status of the Norris Holland Hair House and discuss some next steps in the sale of the property. And we're going to have some discussion, hopefully, and then if there is some modifications in the bid process, we'll have a motion to have that officially documented. So quick synopsis with the Norris Holland Hair House. The town authorized purchasing the home in December 2017, and in February 2019, the town council authorized staff to start advertising to receive bids for the sale of the property in the amount of $60,000 and set a due date of March 25th. And so after that meeting, staff did some advertising. We had limited time to really do an extensive advertising. We also held an open house where 3 interested groups attended that open house to view the home and also talk with Capital Area Preservation, who were there. The bids were due on March 25th, but as we know, no bids were received. April 2nd, we came back to the town council and requested to extend the bid period indefinitely, which the council did, and then the bid price remained at the $60,000. Since that April meeting, we've had a couple interested groups contact the town. However, no bids have been received. And so we are starting to work on a new advertising campaign, trying to get some more information out there that the house is available, it is for sale. We want somebody to purchase this home, love it, and renovate it. So since April, what has happened out on the property, if you have not driven by, the Holly Springs Historic Marker has been installed on the property. And we have purchased and had a new for sale sign, so it looks a little bit more official, like a for sale sign, placed out in the property. We are getting ready to re-up advertisements in Preservation, North Carolina, as well as the National Trust for Historic Preservation. When we had our original go-ahead to advertise, since it was limited time, all we had was web advertising on both of those. Since we do have some additional time, we're not bound for just a few weeks before bids are due. We're also going to be advertising both their print materials as well, which gets out to a much broader group of people. And the Preservation North Carolina ad is actually due Thursday for the fall publication. So today's information will help us with that ad. We're also been doing some research, and we're going to be listing the property on the multiple listing service. Hopefully there could be some potential realtors or other folks that have access to the MLS. The particular group that we're looking at, it is a one-time fee to get it listed on the MLS. There are no fees that we need to commit to paying a realtor if they bring us a buyer for the property. But this will also get it out on Zillow, Realtor.com, and Remax.com. I can't remember, there's about 4 or 5 different web pages. Staff has also put together a really interesting photo book, And the photo book has pictures of each room and talks about the importance of the architectural features in each room. We have one of them here at Town Hall in the Planning Department. There's also a copy of the book at the Norris House. Paul Allen from our attorney's office is who's been bringing our guests out to the house to tour when they are interested. This way they have some additional information and they can learn a little bit about the house and its importance while they're out there looking at the home. We're also going to extend some of our social media, start hitting back again our town traditional social media efforts. However, we've also learned and have made some contacts with some private folks that have different Facebook pages that are really geared towards people that want to find these really unique homes to renovate. And so we're going to be working with them once we have official information and start advertising through those outlets as well. If anybody has other ideas, we are happy to take them because we do want to make sure that we get it out as broadly as possible. So in conjunction with that, planning has been working extensively with our communications and marketing department. And we have, I say a new web page, but it's an updated web page, greatly expanded, about the house, trying to make it look a little bit more as a for sale, not just a history page about the home. But we do have a lot of history out here and a lot of information about the house so people can really learn why this house is important, why they may be interested in pursuing the purchase and renovation of it. In addition, we have a video, and I'm going to show you a short version, and you can go to our webpage to see the full version, talking a little bit about the history. And so this isn't necessarily supposed to be a sales video, but to, once again, on our webpage, give people an idea of why this property is so important to Holly Springs and why somebody should want to purchase it and maintain it.
Two centuries and still standing. Built by the son of a soldier in the Revolutionary War. Once filled with the carnage of the Civil War. The Norris Holland Hare House, against considerable odds, remains to this day.
Well, we're dating the house to 1810. And as you know, it was built by a Revolutionary War veteran's son. If you go further east in North Carolina, you're going to see more of these houses, and you're going to see them in more elaborate forms. Here, though, this is a very rare house. This, we believe, at least to our knowledge at this time, is the oldest house in Holly Springs.
Until recently, the house stood virtually alone in the rolling countryside at the edge of Holly Springs. Few beyond local history buffs and the families who had lived in the old house on Avent Ferry Road knew its story. That began to change in 2017 with Finding Patience, the story of Holly Springs, the work of historical fiction told from the perspective of Patience, a former slave at what was then Leslie Manor. Then, when it appeared the old house might be demolished to make way for new ones, the town of Holly Springs stepped in to save it.
The town purchased this home in 2017, and we've been working really hard to find a buyer since then. We've been working with Capital Area Preservation to identify the unique elements of the home and those that should be preserved.
It is time for a new chapter in the story of the Norris Holland Hare House. The old house on Avent Ferry Road awaits a new owner who will care for it, who will restore the historic house to its former beauty, ensuring that the Norris Holland Hare House is not merely part of Holly Springs' past, but part of its future as well.
And I'd like to thank multiple staff from many different departments that had their hands in putting that video together. It is a really great video, so I encourage you to go out to our webpage, which is hollyspringsnc.us/Norris, and that's also on the for sale sign, giving people a direct link to this information. And so tonight what we want to do is discuss our next steps, trying to figure out where do we go from here in trying to entice an interested buyer in purchasing this home and renovating it. So some of the options are to lower our minimum bid amount. I would encourage that we would not set a deadline for bids, but to maintain our indefinite bid period. And then also Capital Area Preservation has strongly recommended that the council make a condition of a bid submittal, that the renovation plans must be approved by CAP prior to submitting a bid. So this way we do not enter into an agreement to sell the property to a private individual. Then they go to Capital Area Preservation and they cannot agree on a renovation plan, and then the house is in the hands of somebody, a private individual, without an approved renovation plan. So that would be one definite change we would like to make this evening. And so, you know, in talking with Capital Area Preservation, we've discussed it at our workshop back in January. They do anticipate that there's going to be at least $100,000 worth of work that needs to go in the house just to make it livable. The house was lived in until 2017, a couple months before we actually took ownership of the house. However, it has not been under HVAC, and so 2 winters ago it was very cold. The water lines all burst in the house. Very minimal damage, but you know, the house is fine. We've been doing some stabilization work out there. We go out there about every other month. There's something that has to be done minor to the house to maintain it. So there is a lot of staff time going into maintaining it. Also, it's probably potentially up to $200,000 worth of work to actually turn it into a home that somebody would really want to live in. There's a lot of different options for the back part, the newer components of the home, where that may not need to be preserved. Rather, that may be able to be removed and then a new addition go on. So we don't know really what the extent of the renovations are going to be until there is an individual that wants to purchase the home and they design their own plans for it. There's concern about, you know, the structural integrity of the home. It is an old house, so there is going to be a lot of work that a potential person is going to need to do for this renovation work. Capital Area Preservation has suggested, and this is where I was saying, starting before, that Capital Area Preservation had a meeting with all of you, but then also in January we discussed it again, that they do estimate really a reality number somewhere between $20,000 to $25,000 would be a realistic bid for us to expect on this home, just due to its age and its unknown amount of work that needs to be completed. However, you know, we do have funds that have been expended into it. We are continuing to expend funds, and so that bid price really, it's up to you what you would like for us to advertise that minimum bid at.
Comments?
Speaking about the, putting it out in the MLS, have we talked about working with the chamber about, you know, maybe sharing with their realtors and you know, whether it's giving them a digital copy of the book that was put together or sharing the video? I'm just trying to think of people to get
yeah, we have
contacts.
We have not entered into any contracts or anything. We've evaluated a few different online companies, but we haven't entered into anything at this point in time. Yeah, I'd be happy to contact the chamber.
So this is the first we'll put it on MLS?
This will be the first time.
So I'm inclined to see, because property values are climbing, I'm inclined to see what that does. And with this new video, I think I'd like to give it some time.
I missed it. Tell me again, please.
If we haven't been on MLS before, and now we will be, and we have this new video and this website, I'm inclined to see how that works and revisit it in a time frame.
Keep the minimum bid as it is?
At 60.
I mean, at 60, I mean, someone could come in and say 20, 25, I mean, you know,
Well,
I don't think that's...
What are the estimated monthly maintenance costs?
We probably haven't done a monthly. It's probably when you throw in all of our advertising costs and the recurring costs, it's probably somewhere in the realm of $5,000 to $10,000 a year. So Parks and Rec is out there regularly mowing the yard, and Public Works is doing work out there each month as well.
And you indicate, or the packet indicates, that there was some interest for non-residential purposes. Could you elaborate on what that may have been?
Sure. So the original open house day, we did have 3 groups came through. 2 were for residential purposes, and 1 was for a potential coffee shop. Since then, we had somebody, I don't know particularly what kind of office they ran. They wanted to see if they could convert it to an office use, and maybe they were both office. Were they both offices, John? Yeah. What we have done on our new webpage is we do share how you can use the house. So the property is zoned R10. Technically, it's part of the Mills at Avon Ferry subdivision. So rezoning it to a commercial use may not be the best. And the only access to the property actually is through the Mills at Avon Ferry subdivision. So the Avon Ferry access drive is not actually part of the property. So access is only through that subdivision. So that was one of the reasons why we have not really encouraged somebody wanting to rezone the property. But on the webpage, we do talk about it as a single-family home. In our single-family homes, a special exception use is a bed and breakfast. So that is a potential business opportunity. And then also clarifying that if you do have a home occupation, if you live in the home, you can also have an office. You can have customers come to your home, things like that. So we have clarified that information out there, trying to broaden what you can do with the home.
Other comments?
Mr. Mayor?
Sure.
If I can add to that, one, just in the spirit of sharing additional feedback that we've gotten, Capital Area Preservation has indicated to us that they think an amount somewhere in the $20,000 range may be what we likely expect on a bid in this particular nature, and given the uncertainties around the structure. Again, this is you have to figure out where you're comfortable with going, but that's a little bit of feedback that we had gotten from the Capital Area Preservation Group.
Yeah, I don't think the 60,000, I mean, if someone really wanted to have, the property, they would put in a bid, whether it was 10, 20, 25, that. We haven't had any interest, and I think maybe marketing through MLS will help. And then I think we should take that step and then see, potentially maybe lowering it, but I think this would be a good opportunity to get it out on MLS.
How long have we had it at 60? Has it been?
Since January.
It's only 8 months, 7 months. Yeah, I get it. I mean,
Obviously, I was just wondering if dropping it to 50.
yeah, I was going to say the same thing. Maybe just drop it to an even 50 and we show some movement. I don't.
Yeah, but we haven't advertised it out truly to the entire public there. We just kept it here and people who we knew that might be interested in buying this property. So I would say, let's put it on MLS, and with the video would be
And even at 60, we're still taking a $130,000 loss. So we're not making money on this.
Right.
We're putting money into it every single month.
Not
So
why we got it, but yeah.
Plus,
at some point, we're just going to have to.
plus our cost to, maintain it, right? So.
That's right, yeah.
Long wait, though.
Well, it's not, I mean, we would entertain anybody calling us right now.
But
We might not be able to do something, but we
With-
would at least get some interest or know if there's interest.
With the minimum bid, I tell people not to submit a bid if it's not 60.
Because that's what we're saying, it's the minimum bid is
Right.
60, we're not
Oh.
saying up to 60, so people might just be like, well, it says minimum.
Yeah.
We may want to change that.
So if Cap Trust has said, change it 2025, because that's what you're, in their experience,
Well,
that's what you're going to get.
can't you just list a house for 60,000?
We could list an asking price of 60,000 at the
Right.
MLS and and have no minimum bid. There's no requirement that you have to have a minimum bid.
Yeah,
It would just
that's what I was
preclude somebody
thinking.
from coming in and wasting our time really with a $10 bid, because then what we have to do is bring it to you and put it on the agenda. And if certainly I would hope you would reject the $10 bid, but we'd have to go through that formality. If you were to accept a bid in any amount, we would then have to advertise that bid amount. So if somebody came in with if you erased your minimum bid requirement completely, which you can do, and put in a asking price of $60,000, then somebody could come in with a $25,000 bid, at which time we would then advertise that bid. Step one, bring it to you. If you accepted that bid, we would advertise that bid in the newspaper, and then anybody could upset that bid within 10 days from the advertisement date. So you could erase your minimum bid and just see what happens. You can instruct us not to bring you anything less than some amount, 10,000, 5,000, whatever. Keep people from saying, okay, I bid $1, here, take it to the town
Yeah.
council, and
I don't think we want that, but I think, we keep it up and ask for 60,000, and we put, there has to be some type of minimum of 20,000. I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
We haven't even been on the MLS yet, so that's where,
Yeah, but
yeah.
what we're doing today is we're telling folks minimum is 60,000.
So they're not even gonna bother.
Can't- They're not even gonna potentially put a bid in.
How many people
But it-
on like MLS do we think are looking for a house like this? I mean, it opens it up to a much wider audience for sure.
It-
but
yeah, it
if you're looking
does.
For a house like this, in this area, you're probably talking a cap. You're probably looking around, sniffing your nose in places that you would have caught wind of this by now. So I just wonder how much wider of a field are we really going to open up to by doing that?
I mean, it doesn't have to be someone from Holly Springs or this area, but an investor from.
Yeah, I'm not saying I care where they come from. I'm just saying time is money. Every month that goes by, we're putting more money in operating costs. So at some point, how long do we
This,
go?
I think the MLS gives us an opportunity to reach out to a larger audience, and, I think it's worth a shot, at least 30 days, put it out there and see what happens.
At a price,
Changing it.
like we talked about before?
Well, I wouldn't put, a minimum bid of 60,000.
I wouldn't do
I think you just list it at 60,000, but
59,000,
if someone does
whatever.
come and wants to put an offer in, and they want to put $10, we're not gonna,
Right.
can't accept that.
Right.
I think there should be, a bottom floor where we say, okay, 20,000, would the council would entertain a bid of $20,000? And I think that's something that we would take a look at.
And the listing would state that they have to meet the capital area.
Oh, there's all the rules that they have to,
Yeah, to restore.
yeah.
Yeah, so our ads, so we could advertise a purchase price or a sales price of
Right,
60,000. The ads do just state that they have to go through a public bid process, and that could be silent on what that minimum amount is in the ad. And then the ad also does include the cap, easements, and restoration agreement.
What do you think?
Yeah.
yeah, if you just remove the minimum bid and
Yep.
put a $60,000 ask price, that doesn't mean you have to accept 60, it's just a
Right.
regular real estate transaction.
Right.
You
That's
don't
what
have to
we're
accept
trying to.
any amount. Whatever amount you accept just has to be advertised and subject to a upset bid.
Upset bid.
Okay.
Right. And did you say that we can say, don't show us anything if it's less than like $10,000?
Yeah, whatever number you want to
Well, at
decide.
that time, yeah.
I mean,
Is that our minimum bid then?
In essence, it would be, we don't really have to advertise a minimum bid. If really what you want to do is just get the flow of
Right.
offers coming in, we don't have to advertise a minimum bid. We just,
Okay.
Let's take off the minimum bid of 60.
we just take that off and you just tell us what you don't want to see, and we just won't show, we'll
Right.
just say, my client won't accept that.
Okay.
Does 59,000 sound cheaper than 60,000?
$59,999.
As an old marketeer, there is a little bit of, so to say, psychological motivation here. That's up to you guys.
I think.
I got my checkbook ready now.
See that? We got a buyer already.
If I could buy it, I would.
Yeah.
Pitch in $10,000, we're done.
Yeah, everybody pitch in, there we go. And then, so what does the council feel should be, we don't want to entertain anything below 10, 15, what's your?
At that point in time, yeah, you don't have to.
Just say 10.
I say 10,000.
Okay.
Dan,
That's
You want to
fine.
leave it at 60 or go to 59?
Peter?
Leave it
10?
at 60, I think we're okay.
Okay.
Leave it at 60.
Yeah.
Okay.
What do you think?
We've just said,
So, Gina-
we'd consider 10. It seems like, oh my God.
Going back to those three parties, or two of them that were interested on the residential side, what was some of the feedback, fear that they were looking at, or?
The biggest fear was the foundation, the unknown of the foundation.
Right.
There was one particular gentleman, Capital Area Preservation was familiar with him. He's looked at several properties. I think he may have purchased one or two and has done some renovation work. For whatever reason, during that bid period time, I'll reach back out to him again. I think Sean has in time. But we'll let him know that it is out there, it is still available. Give us your best offer. He was not able to secure financing. He couldn't find a bank willing to give him a loan for this particular house because he could not find an insurance agency willing to give him insurance because there was no electricity to the property.
Been there. Been through some of that, okay.
So where are we?
List it for 60,000. Minimum bid would be $10,000. And I would do it for 30 days and then report back to us to see if there's any movement on there. And if you do have a bid prior to that, I guess we would have to list that, right? John?
That's correct. Yeah, we would bring you, if there was something above $10,000, an offer that was bona fide and they were ready to meet the requirements of the CAP conservation easement or easement, then we'd bring it to you if anything was north of 10,000.
We all good with that?
Yep.
Yes?
Mayor, if I could ask just one clarification on Mayor Pro Tem O'Brien's comment there, in the listing for 30 days. Do I interpret from that, don't take it off after 30 days, but report back to
Right,
us?
right.
Correct. Yeah, that's what I was asking, feedback
Yeah.
after 30 days, if we've gotten any type of interest from any parties that were, considering purchasing the property, so.
Sound good, Gina?
Sounds great.
Right.
And then is that like a form of a
Just
motion
take
that they just did?
consensus. I think,
Just consensus.
object, if anybody objects, speak now or
Or forever hold your peace.
hold your peace for 30 days.
I know that part.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Gina.
Thanks,
Thank you.
and well done. That
Yes,
was
thank you.
Yep, thanks for,
really
Thank
nice.
you to the town and Parks and Rec for keeping it up. It's great.
And Public Works.
Yeah, that's it. Public Works, definitely.
Okay, going to other business, real quick. At 7 o'clock this morning, I was downtown having breakfast with somebody that we've been talking about. Jim Trogdon, Secretary of NCDOT. And we were talking to a group of 700 and some police, fire, all kinds of special people there at the convention center. And Holly Springs got on the map. And that's what I'm proud of the most, that he invited Holly Springs to come and talk about safety. And Holly Springs talked about safety. We talked about our fire, we talked about police, we talked about our citizens and why we're the safest town in North Carolina to live in. And we got all that good stuff over, and we talked about the programs the fire department's doing. You saw the one that Joe Harassi sent out. I didn't get all that because we didn't have that much time. But I think we got our point across that Holly Springs is on the map. No other mayors were there, no other towns were there, except for Raleigh, of course. And the Mayor Pro Tem welcomed everybody, then he left. So I'm just proud of that day for us in total. And that's a big crowd. I almost told them it was bigger than Holly Springs was when we first moved here, but I didn't say that. But anyway, I think we have a friend in camp. And you and I have talked about this too. So we will maybe do some preliminary discussion on our earlier discussion prior to the meeting on Wednesday, and what you and I can talk about that. Crosswalk safety came up. The hot car chief that you guys are working on for saving kids' lives, that came up. A lot of things came up, and also the challenges that DOT has with their funding. In that, he asked me a question. He said, "What do you think about the legislature downtown?" Well, I wasn't on the mic then, so I did. I told him what I thought. He is telling me that his budget, and I think I got these numbers right, was something like 143 million operating. And the legislature is asking him to come up with $110 or $112 million for hurricane relief. Well, he looked at me and said, "How can I do that?" I said, "I'm not sure how you could do it either." So anyway, it was a good day, good meeting, and Holly Springs will be remembered. So that's my story. I'm sticking with it. Also, we talked about the crosswalk safety. because Meg Miller, Deputy Regional Administrator, National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, she talked about pedestrian safety, and boy, did that really come into, it was a kind of a panel discussion back and forth. So we talked about our 6 beacon flashers and 6 more to come. So we got it all in. I'm done. Thank you. Who else?
I have a couple things. One, dovetail the crosswalk safety. I believe last time we had a presentation, we talked about with the school year coming in, is there some program that council could do and we could go out and help with crosswalk or do flags or what? I mean, so I'm up for that now that the school season's coming around. So if you want to put something together, I'm all about signing up. I also wanted to thank the folks who have been helping with some issues that are going on in the Old Town District in terms of parking and things that have surfaced up through social media. And I want folks to know, because it comes up on social media, the only official channels we monitor are where we can find out what's going on. So it just happens to be that we saw it, and the town is, I believe, looking at some short-term quick changes and maybe some more longer-term, and looking at some parking issues and Randy's not.
There will actually be long-term changes.
And long-term as well, okay. And I appreciate everybody recognizing that when you're not in an HOA, when you don't have, the streets are really small and you haven't been, the luxury of curb and gutter, it is difficult. And when folks are getting damage to their homes, thank you for thinking of that group as differently, because it's different than any other.
And if I could just add one little nugget to that, I would anticipate either at your August 20th meeting or your first meeting in September, potentially coming back with an action that approves some potential adjustments to the street. I think, as I understand it, our policy requires some level of council approval on some of the potential changes that could occur there. So we'll plan to bring that back here soon.
Okay. And then the second part of that is because there is quite a bit of activity on non-town channels, and I ran into somebody downstairs that said they didn't know about some of the things going on. I think there's always an opportunity to say, if you want to engage with town, here are the channels. If you're saying things on some other sites, we may or may not see it. I typically say, if you have a comment, come back to the town so that staff can answer. So I don't know if there's another kind of notice we could say, these are the ways to get on the alerts. This is the pages that we watch. This is, if you can't find us, this is where you can email. Just maybe have something else come up like that. That'd be great.
Right? What else?
Quick question. Do we have Avon Ferry Road right out here? When will that be opening? Okay. And while we've been sitting here, I received a couple of messages that we still some traffic lights out on Holly Springs Road due to whatever happened today. I know we had a blinking one U-turn on the bypass this afternoon. So hopefully by the time we get out of here, they'll be fixed, but it's still happening.
Chief, hear anything new? Yeah. I think. What else? All good? That's it?
Yep.
All right, manager's report.
Thank you, Mayor. I do have a handful of items. I'll try to run through those relatively quickly. The first one is just an acknowledgement and thank you to staff. And we had some private partners last week who helped us with the Village District Open House. We had a great session over at the Cultural Center. And I think we had over 100 residents attend, which was great to see. I do want to recognize, we had Christine Quanti from the Chamber who was there, helped talk a little bit about downtown businesses.
Hi, Christine.
Thank you, Christine.
Thank you, Christine.
And Chamber.
And we also had Tom Williams with Rex Hospital who was there to talk about the exciting work going on there. So I want to thank them and staff, and Anna Johnston, who was instrumental in helping to coordinate that. The next item, and this may be a little bit back, but this evening we had the Avon Ferry Road Realignment Open House. That was downstairs in the Hallman Room from 5 to 7. I just want to acknowledge that. Upcoming, we have the Grigsby Avenue improvements. There's an open house planned for August 20th from 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. That'll be at Town Hall, I believe here in the Hallman Room. But a great opportunity for residents to learn a little bit more about that particular transportation bond project. And excited to share the Holly Springs Police Department on August 16th from 4 to 7 p.m. are going to be doing what's called We're Loving It, and they're partnering with McDonald's here in Holly Springs. And as I understand, I think they're actually going to be filling orders and doing some work, helping out, engaging with kids, and promoting some of the Special Olympics in North Carolina. An opportunity, again, just to kind of build relationships and connect with the community. So a real exciting event coming up there on August 16th at the McDonald's. And then just a reminder, next week there is no workshop. That was canceled a couple months ago, but we'll see you back here on August 20th.
Thank you. Oh, I forgot to say one thing, because I'm looking at Aaron. The secretary today said, we are really involved in the drone situation all over the state. He said, now, Dick, I understand that Holly Springs is leading the pack. And I said, you better believe it. So, Aaron, keep me posted. I hear you. Anything else? If not, Counselor?
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor. I believe the council would like to go into closed session to discuss the town manager's personnel evaluation. So pursuant to North Carolina General Statute 143.318.11A6 to go into closed session to discuss a personnel matter.
Thank you. Motion?
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Good night, everybody. Thank you.